Hello, I am Laura S. Quinn. I am the editor of the nonprofit website Insider and a nonprofit website coach and mentor. The nonprofit website Insider is an email list and does a series of webinars. Would love for you to, if you're not subscribed, to subscribe. It's easily Googleable. Here is me. Oh, slightly blown out. So as I mentioned, I help nonprofits as a coach and mentor. I'm also the editor. And I'm so excited to have today Susan Cho of of Ohio Legal Help with me today to talk about their text-to-speech feature. So Susan is the visionary founding executive director of Ohio Legal Help. She started her career as a legal aid advocate, specializing in civil rights, housing, and community economic development. So prior to her, she was just telling me, I think it's 7 years. Prior to that, she served as the general counsel for the Ohio Access to Justice Foundation, and then also in several leadership capacities at the Ohio Attorney General's office, including as section chief for the consumer protection and civil rights. Welcome, Susan. Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I actually see some folks I've seen before, so I think we have a good audience today for this.
Fabulous. So just to start us off, I'm wondering if you can give us a quick demo of the Ohio Legal Help site, just to help us understand what you're all about.
Sure. Let me let's see how I do. Okay.
She's going to seize control here, and
I'm going to make sure I share sound. Let me do that. Okay. Can folks see the Ohio Legal Help main site?
absolutely.
Great. Folks are probably familiar with Ohio Legal Help. Let me actually go ahead and do this. And I can do a quick demo of the site. I think the primary emphasis, though, is probably text to speech, and we have two integrations going on with the site. So, and most of you folks who run websites, while this is our homepage, most of the folks don't start there necessarily, but it's an easy way to show folks the site. And so we have two different text to speech integrations. One is custom for us, and then one is utilizing a commercial out of the box product called Beyond Words. So let me demonstrate Beyond Words first. It's not the best kind of example of
Need
it, but
legal information, forms or a lawyer. Family and safety. Divorce, dissolution.
and so it goes through the cards and so forth. We try to think through different ways to do the homepage text to speech, but I'll show you a better example, which is an actual article, and then our what we have as a custom triage that's part of our site. So when you go into the triage, so obviously here,
Are you or your family in danger?
this is actually a custom Drupal integration. We created a custom module to do this. This is not something that's necessarily out of the box, but this will read the question and then each of the responses. I'm going to go ahead and say yes, and then you come to an interstitial page, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. Usually if folks who do start our homepage triage right now, I think our completion rate's around 95, 96%. But you'll see here, and then this is a better example of the Beyond Words integration here, where you'll see like you can.
Domestic and dating violence protection orders. Family. A protect.
And then I'm going to show you this in our mobile view, because these are just some considerations for folks. Because obviously there's a safety exit here, and then there's additional controls. And most of our users are on mobile when they're on our site. And so
Protection order can help keep you safe if you are experiencing domestic violence or dating violence.
And so we had to create a slightly customized Beyond Words icon here to make sure that it didn't interfere with our exit and then our chat as we did this. So just some things for consideration when you're even thinking about the Beyond Words integration, which I will tell you is the simpler integration here. But then, oops, I stopped my share. Let me go back. So then I'm actually going to go out of mobile for a second. And then So in terms of the text-to-speech, we have the Beyond Words integration, which we'll read. We did it for a number of different reasons. We did it for to obviously make our site as accessible as possible, looking at some CAG standards. But we also did it because as we work with our partners, they said that in particular in certain languages, that the population that we're trying to serve, for instance, with Spanish, that the literacy rates were lower than maybe the general population. And so they actually encouraged us that as we thought about this, that if we are going to do more translation on the site, that we find a way to have the site read to folks to increase the literacy.
Órdenes de protección contra la violencia doméstica y contra la violencia en el noviazgo.
So for each of the languages on our site currently, the text-to-speech is supported as well. And so, you know, again, and then Ukrainian, for instance.
Накази про захист від домашніх.
So that essentially each of the languages is also supported for text-to-speech because we wanted to increase accessibility to our site for not only multiple languages, but also for countries where literacy rates are low. For instance, one of the languages that we're going to, it's going to take some additional custom work is Somali. And we know based upon our discussions with the community that literacy rates are very low with respect to that particular population. And so text-to-speech is particularly important for those folks. So these is one of the reasons that we did it. I also want to show folks the other feature that we have, which is that for all our TurboTax-like forms, we offer text-to-speech on that as well.
Вітаємо! Цей інструмент допоможе українцям, які приїжджають у
And so we hand translated this Ukrainian immigration and benefits tool. It's a little action plan that we created for new arrivals from Ukraine. We have a large population of new arrivals from Ukraine because of the current conflict. They're in Northeast Ohio. And so we created this little tool to assist both the helpers on the ground and recent arrivals find the appropriate benefits in Ohio. Now, you can also hide all the read aloud buttons if just to make sure that we want to make this as accessible and kind of cancel as much noise as possible. Folks didn't want to see it, but at the same time, it generally defaults to this. And so I'm going to put this back in English.
So just a question about all the languages, which are fantastic. Did you find that the tools that you were using that easily translate into English also have the capacity? Like, are you using AI tools to translate into Ukrainian? And did they translate well into, read Ukrainian as well as all of these other languages? Sorry, I phrased that badly. What I actually mean is, does it read Ukrainian as well as it reads English or Spanish?
So the reading is fine. And because Ukrainian, because I actually tested the reading aloud with folks who are native speakers. So the reading is fine. Accents can be better depending on the tool. So this is browser supported. So, you know, that we're kind of subject to what operating systems support. And so the voice for our custom tool, the accent is not as good as, for instance, the Beyond Words tool. And native speakers can easily discern the accent. And so Beyond Words, which is a commercial product, does a better job of reading the translated content. It's all the same words, but the accents vary. And then on our custom integration, because Beyond Words cannot integrate with this, this is fine. I mean, we've had folks listen to it and they say that they can understand everything. They just say the accent's just a little bit different, but it's perfectly understandable.
Great.
Yeah, and then we don't do a lot of this. Most of this is actually done for English. And it's for different reasons, working with our courts here.
Welcome. This tool can help Ukrainians who arrive in.
So we've integrated this with multiple forms. So I'm showing you the Ukrainian one, but we've gone ahead and translated that. But for instance, we have a CPO tool here. I'm going to actually show this new SUPO tool that we launched with the Supreme Court. And so.
Will this form assistant help you? A protection order can be
And then because this is a form that we're trying to emulate the experience of a helper sitting down with the individual and reading through the form, it's a different experience.
Are you 18 or older?
So everything gets, a speaker if
Yes.
the response. Yeah.
No.
And so that folks can literally have someone sit with them while they are completing a tool. The one thing that we did turn off for Beyond Words, and I think it's important for folks to understand this, is that Beyond Words has a tool. I'm going to go ahead and translate this back to English. So Beyond Words, normally if I would to click on this, because it does assist folks, especially with low literacy, if the text is highlighted. And Beyond Words does that. That's what it does out of the box. It will actually highlight as it reads along, and you can stop and pause it. We actually disabled that feature because on phone in particular, if someone was, should say, browsing a little bit, it was very sensitive. And so when we tested it, we realized that the text to speech could be engaged without actually clicking on this. Like you clicked on a paragraph and Beyond Words would read the paragraph. And so we had to make a decision. So as folks think about this and the tools they might use, because one of our top access pages, and it's great that we have the resource. It's just, unfortunate that we're serving so many. But in particular on the domestic and dating violence materials, we did not want the text-to-speech engaged inadvertently.
Yeah.
So we turned off that feature. So those are the balancing things that, we need to think about. And, we'll work with Beyond Words to see if there's a way to turn on the highlighting without, it's just the way that the highlighting works. It can also create an engagement of the text-to-speech without folks realizing that it's going to happen. And so we actually turned off that feature. But it depends on, again, the population and the audience you're working with. And so those are just, again, some of the decisions that folks will make. But text-to-speech is integrated for our entire site. Again, we're using Beyond Words for the main articles of the site. And then for our custom features like our TurboTax-like forms, that's a custom Drupal module that was created. So I think that's the demo for now.
Fabulous. So I think that you're talking about balancing of kind of what you need to think of in terms of the pros and cons is really compelling. And I'm interested in kind of diving a little deeper into that for accessibility in particular. I can imagine that this is a fabulous tool for people who have low eyesight and would prefer to be read to. I'm interested in what happens for those who are completely limited eyesight and are actually using a screen reader. Have you thought through the screen reader experience?
So we thought through the screen reader experience before we had text-to-speech. So for instance, the Ohio State University Office of Disability, so at OSU, and then we had the entire site hand reviewed for accessibility. And so it works really well with current screen readers that are on the market for individuals who've installed that as part of their normal kind of technology access tools that they're using. And so, the text to speech, when we thought through it, was for folks that, maybe low vision, literacy issues, in terms of looking at the site even before, though, for folks that are using accessibility tools and technology, those are things that you have to think of from the moment that you're building. Whether you're going to get a hand review done, you can get a hand review done by experts, you can do a code review, and then there are, can't think of some tools right now, but there are good tools on the market as well to do just a quick accessibility review of your site.
Of course, I am actually thinking more through for instance, the form where there's a little hear this icon beside all of the elements of the form. And I think you might have shown us a way that there was just a way to turn it off.
Mhm.
I'm imagining on a screen reader, you wouldn't want to see, or be read a little hear this on absolutely everything.
Yeah, so they can turn it all off at the button level if they want to. I mean, they can get something that says turn off all the buttons if they want to engage it. And that was something that we had an accessibility review done of the buttons, and that's something that they recommended.
Great. Fantastic. Let's see. Caroline asks, I know you said this wasn't an out-of-the-box product, but can you just share who you worked with to set this up?
Sure. So we work with one primarily development firm. It's Capellic LLC. And I work with one of the partners, they're named Joel. And so we have a Drupal site. It's currently on Drupal 10. And it really depends on what you want to do. We have a slightly unique site. But for instance, the page you're looking at here is Beyond Words, and that's a straightforward integration. And so if folks are thinking about text to speech, I would start there. That's something that I think any Drupal developer should be able to help you integrate with your current Drupal site or your current WordPress site, if that's what you're working on. And it's a simple API key. Now, on the other custom portions of our site, like web forms, that's where really Capellic's expertise on Drupal, is so critical to us doing that well.
Great. And so when you say it's a straightforward API key, that sounds like maybe a couple day project, maybe a week project. Does that sound like the right magnitude to you?
I'd have to check. I mean, Matt's my product manager. I mean, Beyond Words is something he can do to set it up, I think it would depend on the capacity of the organization. Glad to connect folks with Matt on my team, who is probably better versed in terms of how long he thinks. In terms of the cost, we just pay $99 a month for the Beyond Words service. You'll need to get a higher allotment when you run your entire site at the beginning, and then for each language that you support as well. But then after that, I think you can probably go to a $99 a month license. And what that allows us to do is that as we update articles, it automatically updates the Beyond Words as well.
Fantastic. Fabulous. And what can you tell us about how much the feature is used? Do you get reports? Are you able to know how many people are actually listening to the articles?
Yeah, so Beyond Words has really simple analytics, and so folks can use that. We set up a trigger on our data layer that we called Play, and that trigger goes through our Google Tag Manager, and that way we can actually look at not only how many times an article is played, but in what language it is played. We just started, this really launched, I would say, in June, so we don't have a ton of data right now. So I can get back to folks as we get more data, but we did set it up so that not only are we seeing when an article is played, which article is played, but in what language it's played.
Great. And any sense at all as to whether it is getting use or not yet?
So in terms of the entire site, it's small. It's less than 1%. So, we're going to see over 1 million visits this year.
Yeah.
So I guess 1% of that,
Yeah,
right?
that's substantial.
Which is substantial.
Yep.
But I did pull some Ukraine data, and we're going to watch that because it appears that in some other languages, it's potentially getting higher play. And we did, in part do this to support languages or countries where literacy rates may not be super high. So we'll see. Ukraine is not actually one of those countries. The literacy rates are, I guess, probably higher than even the United States. So we'll see. But I did see that with Ukraine, it looks to be a 2% play rate. So which is higher than the general pop. But we'll watch it. It's we don't have enough data
Yep.
yet in terms of the time period. Yeah, we'll have to watch it over time.
Great. Fabulous. And as I wrap up my questions for you, and we certainly will transition over to questions from everybody else. If you have a question, please put it into the chat. So just in general, what advice would you have for those who are thinking about implementing a similar feature?
So obviously you have to always consider cost, right? And then think through what your goals are with why you're implementing a feature. We happen to have been granted funding to do this, and so that helped obviously alleviate pretty much all the costs of implementation. And our goal is to really look at, especially with our new multi-language feature, to see if, in a sense, we're getting higher text-to-speech plays on languages where literacy may be an issue. So we're going to watch that. We also did it. One of our goals is that we're going to be launching with a new position that we had funded, which is for a re-entry fellow. We are potentially going to work with the Department of Rehab and Corrections here to get on tablets in some of the prisons. And we really wanted to have a text-to-speech feature for that because we know, looking at the data, literacy rates are even lower with respect to justice-involved individuals and folks who are incarcerated. And so, we're really thinking forward, and then we can look at the data to see how it plays out. And so this is why we prioritize this, looking at not only our current goals, things that our community partners told us, but because we're potentially entering into these new partnerships to serve this additional population that we had some materials for, but we're taking a more focused approach with respect to individuals who are currently incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. So this was all part of that in terms of thinking forward and thinking through needs.
Right. So it sounds like for those who are thinking about low literacy populations, this could really be a great tool in the toolkit.
It could. And your website should already be accessible related to screen readers and other tools. And then you can work with an accessibility review to think through how new tools will interplay with your prior tools.
Yeah. Terrific. Anybody have any questions for Susan before we wrap up? We've got several that I see in the chat, but I think that we have addressed them all. So a last 30-second warning before we wrap. Sierra is asking about accessibility testing. Is there a company you use specifically for accessibility testing?
So we worked with, I'm trying to think, this was something that the Pew worked with us on. And so we contracted, they contracted for us. I'm trying to think through. It was a university, I'll have to remember, but they did a hand review. I can get it to folks afterwards in terms of the university consultant that they utilized to hand review our site. And then I'm trying to think, we do a code review, which should be part of the package. And then there are lightweight tools, I would say, like Google Lighthouse, which is free, that can do an accessibility review of your site as well. But I'll have to remember the specific consultant that we had. And it's published in a Pew report as well.
Fabulous. Thank you so much to everybody who came, and especially thank you to Susan for your time and all your expertise. This was incredibly useful and informative. Thank you to all. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.